talk about the beautiful business of milk today. Yeah, yeah. I got milk. Let's talk about milk. Oh yeah, baby, let's talk about the beautiful business of milk today.
This episode of Got Milk is sponsored by Shunya Agritech, the folks revolutionizing cattle nutrition with hydroponic green fodder. Visit their website at shunya.live for more details or download the Shunya app from Play Store or App Store.
All right, get ready to learn something you might not know about India's milk production.
Oh, this is going to be interesting.
I think so too. We're looking at this research paper that really digs into milk output across different states and breeds in India. And, everyone knows India has a massive population, right?
Right.
But did you know it's also #1 globally for both cattle and buffalo?
Yeah, I did know that. That makes this research pretty fascinating. I mean, it helps us really understand what makes India such a leading milk producer globally.
Okay, so our mission today, we got to figure out what's really driving all that milk production in India.
We're going to cover it all.
We'll look at everything, from the differences between cattle and buffalo milk to how things change across regions.
And just to start, let's talk about the elephant in the room, or, well, the buffalo.
Okay.
A full 55% of India's milk comes from buffalo.
Whoa!
Even though they have fewer milk-producing buffalo than cows in the country.
No way! Seriously, I would thought cows were the main source of milk, for sure.
It does seem counterintuitive, but it makes sense when you think about the historical context. Buffalo were domesticated, way back in the Indus Valley, like over 5,000 years ago.
Oh, wow, so they've been around a long time.
They've had all that time to really adapt to the specific climate and conditions in India.
So they're kind of like fine-tuned for milk production there over generations, huh?
Exactly. And get this, Indian buffalo, they produce almost 3 times the amount of milk compared to cows.
Wow, 3 times. Okay, that's impressive.
It's not just quantity, though. It's quality, too. The makeup of buffalo milk, it's just different. It's naturally richer in fat, and that affects the taste, the nutritional value, everything.
This is blowing my mind a little bit. I'm starting to see why India's dairy scene is so unique. So we talked buffalo, but what about cattle?
Yes, the cows.
The research paper mentions a bunch of different breeds. What's the deal with that?
Right. So in India, you've got 3 main categories of cattle breeds: indigenous, exotic, and crossbred exotic. Each one has its own sort of characteristics.
Okay, break it down for me. What makes each category stand out?
So indigenous breeds, those are the ones native to India.
Okay, makes sense.
They've evolved over centuries to deal with the local climate. They're pretty resistant to diseases, and they can even handle not so great food. They're tough.
They're survivors, but what's the downside?
Well, they don't produce as much milk as the exotic breeds.
Ah, got it. So it's like a trade-off.
Exactly. Now, exotic breeds, those come from other countries, mostly Europe.
Interesting.
They're known for producing lots of milk, which is why they were brought to India.
But there's got to be a catch, right?
Of course. They might not handle India's climate as well and can get sick more easily.
Makes sense. So it's a trade-off. High production, but potentially more problems. And then there's the crossbred exotics.
Right. It's like taking the best of both worlds. They try to combine the good stuff from indigenous and exotic breeds.
Oh, that's clever.
Scientists and breeders, they carefully pick the parent breeds so they can create animals that produce a lot of milk. A&D can handle the Indian environment.
Oh, wow, that's fascinating. It's like a whole science. Does the research mention any specific breeds as examples?
Absolutely. For instance, there's the Gur breed.
Yeah.
It's an indigenous breed from Gujarat, known for being disease-resistant and tough in hot weather.
Impressive.
Then you've got the Holstein Friesian. That's an exotic breed from Europe.
Okay.
It's known for being like the world's highest producing dairy animal.
Wow, that's amazing.
And then you've got the Curran Fries, a crossbred. It mixes the high milk yield of the Holstein Friesian with the hardiness of the Tharparker, which is an indigenous breed.
So you get the best of both worlds. That's really cool.
It is.
I'm really starting to appreciate how complex India's dairy industry is. But with all these different breeds, does milk production vary across different regions of India?
Oh, absolutely. And the maps in the research paper really show this. You look at it, Uttar Pradesh just pops out. It's the top producer of both cattle and buffalo milk.
Uttar Pradesh, why is that? What makes them such a milk powerhouse?
Well, it's a few things. They have a lot of agricultural land, a big livestock population, and their state government really supports the dairy industry.
So they've got it all going on. What about other states? Any interesting regional trends?
For sure. Like, Tamil Nadu stands out because they produce a lot of crossbred exotic cattle milk.
Interesting. Why do you think that is?
They've probably been putting a lot of effort into breeding programs to boost milk yields.
So they're really embracing the potential of crossbreeding. That makes sense. Any other surprises from the data?
Well, Assam's contribution to what they call non-descriptive cattle milk production in the Northeast is pretty interesting.
Non-descriptive, what does that even mean?
It means there's a lot of milk coming from breeds that they haven't really categorized.
Oh, wow. So there's a whole bunch of uncategorized cattle out there producing milk. This is getting more and more complex. I know the researchers used some fancy statistical analysis to dig into the data. Can you give us the key findings, but like in simple terms?
Sure. Basically, what they found backs up what we've been talking about.
Yeah.
The breed of the animal and the region where it lives, those both really affect how much milk it produces.
So it's not just about having the best breed. You got to match the right breed to the right place.
Exactly. And this is useful for dairy farmers. They can use this information to choose the right breed for their region and get the most milk out of their animals.
That's where the research gets practical, right? It helps people make better decisions.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm learning a lot here, and I know we're just getting started. This is great.
You know, one thing that really struck me from the research, it says the overall milk production from cattle and buffalo is statistically similar.
That's kind of surprising, right? I mean, we just talked about how individually buffalo produce way more milk than cows.
Exactly. It's almost like a paradox, isn't it? Shows you how data can really challenge what we think we know.
For sure. But what does this mean for India's dairy industry as a whole, I wonder, especially with a growing population?
Well, when you consider that the demand for milk and all those dairy products in India, it's growing like crazy.
It makes sense. More people, more milk needed.
This research has some interesting things to say about how India can keep up with that demand.
Okay, I'm all ears. What do they suggest?
They think one key strategy could be focusing on those indigenous cattle breeds, like really trying to improve their milk yields.
So not just relying on the exotic breeds or crossbreeding. I'm intrigued. Tell me more.
It all comes down to sustainability, really. Indigenous breeds are already adapted to the conditions in India. They're tougher against diseases, and they don't need as much special care.
Right, we talked about that earlier.
In the long run, they could be a much more sustainable choice compared to relying too much on the exotic breeds.
It's about playing the long game, right? Investing in the breeds that are already at home in India's environment.
Exactly. It's like unlocking this hidden potential, you know?
Yeah.
These animals have been part of India's agriculture for ages.
For centuries. Okay, I'm getting it. It's not just about producing more milk, it's about doing it in a way that makes sense for India and for the planet, right?
Absolutely. Sustainability is key. We can't just talk about milk production without thinking about the environmental impact.
That's a crucial point for sure. What are some of those big environmental things we need to think about with India's dairy industry?
Well, just like with any kind of livestock farming, there's an environmental footprint. You've got methane emissions, water usage, and land degradation. And in India, with so many livestock, those things have to be managed carefully.
Right, it's a balancing act, right? Producing more milk, but doing it in a way that protects the environment for the future.
Absolutely. So what can India do to find that balance?
Yeah, what are some solutions?
One big thing is promoting better animal welfare. When animals are healthy, they're more productive. That means more milk, but it also means less environmental impact per liter of milk.
It's a win-win. Better for the animals, better for the planet. What else?
Improving feed efficiency is another area with huge potential. If we can give the animals better quality feed and make sure their diets are just right, we can reduce waste and get more milk. It's about being smarter, not just working harder.
Right. I'm really starting to see the bigger picture here. It's a whole complex system. Speaking of systems, the research paper also talked about how consumer preferences play a role in all of this. What did they say about that?
They noticed that consumer preferences are changing in India. People are getting more discerning, I guess you could say.
What do you mean?
Well, there's growing interest in organic milk and milk from specific indigenous breeds. People see them as healthier or culturally important.
So they're being more mindful of where their milk comes from, not just grabbing any carton off the shelf.
Exactly. And this change in what consumers want, it can actually change the whole dairy industry.
Really?
It
How?
encourages farmers to be more sustainable, to treat their animals better, because that's what people are demanding.
It's like a ripple effect.
Exactly. And a positive one. It shows the power of making informed choices as consumers.
Wow, this whole deep dive is making me think differently about milk and the dairy industry. It's
Yeah.
way more complicated than I realized.
It really is.
And we've covered a lot today, from the different breeds to sustainability and even consumer trends. It's incredible how much we've explored.
I know, this research paper is packed with information.
We could probably talk for hours more, but we should probably summarize some key takeaways for our listeners. What would you say are the biggest things we've learned so far?
Well, we talked about the surprising fact that buffalo milk dominates in India, even though there are more cows. We learned that where the animal lives, the region, can be just as important as its breed for milk production. And we talked about how India could really benefit from focusing on indigenous breeds for a more sustainable future for their dairy industry. Oh, and don't forget the consumers. Their choices matter too.
It's been a wild ride so far, but the journey isn't over yet. There's still more to uncover. In the last part of our deep dive, we're going to zoom out even more and look at the big picture impact of India's milk production. So we've spent a lot of time digging into the science of milk production in India, different breeds, sustainability, all that.
Right. It's been a fascinating journey.
But now I'm curious about the bigger picture,
Yeah.
What does all this mean for India as a whole? Like, what are the societal and economic impacts of this massive industry?
That's a great point. It's easy to forget that India's dairy industry is so much more than just, well, milk.
Yeah.
It's a lifeline for so many people, especially in rural areas.
You're right. You're right. It's easy to forget that there are actual people behind every glass of milk.
For sure.
Families whose lives depend on this industry.
Absolutely. Dairy farming provides income and jobs for a huge number of small-scale farmers and all those agricultural workers across the country.
Right.
It's a vital part of their economies.
It's really incredible when you think about the human impact. Yeah.
And it's not just the farmers, is it?
No, not at all. The whole economic impact spreads way beyond the farm itself.
Okay. How so?
Well, think about it. The dairy industry supports all these other businesses. Processing, packaging, transportation, retail.
Oh, yeah.
It creates jobs and opportunities at every stage.
It's like a whole web of interconnected things.
Exactly.
And with India's population growing all the time, that demand for milk is only going to go up,
Right.
which makes this industry even more important, I guess.
Exactly. As that demand grows, it becomes even more important to find sustainable solutions to boost production.
Yeah, sustainable and ethical, right.
Absolutely. We can't ignore the long-term effects. We have to think about the environment, animal welfare, all of it.
So how do we balance all of that? Meeting those growing needs, but also protecting the future. What role can things like innovation and technology play in all this?
That's where it gets exciting. We need to find new ways to increase milk production, but do it without harming the planet or the animals.
I see. And that's where technology can be a game changer.
Okay, so it's not just about old school farming anymore. We're talking high-tech solutions.
Exactly. There's this whole field called precision livestock farming. It uses sensors and data analysis to keep the animals healthy and make sure they're eating right.
So we're bringing the data revolution to the farm.
You got it. This not only helps get more milk, but it also cuts down on waste and makes everything more efficient.
That's amazing. What other cool advancements are coming up in India's dairy world?
Another big area is improving the supply chain.
What does that mean?
It means cutting down on waste and making the whole process, from the farm to the consumer, smoother and more efficient.
Streamlining everything.
Exactly. And with India going digital in so many ways, there's a huge chance to use technology to manage the supply chain better.
So every drop of milk counts.
Absolutely. But technology alone isn't enough,
Yeah, what else do we need?
We need the government to step up, too. They need to create policies that encourage farmers to use eco-friendly practices and invest in research.
So it's got to be a team effort.
For sure. Farmers, scientists, businesses, policymakers, consumers, everyone working together.
It sounds like a huge challenge, but also a really exciting opportunity.
It is. It's about realizing that human well-being, the environment, and the economy, they're all connected. We can't have one without the others.
Wow, this deep dive has been eye-opening. We started with the tiny details of milk production, and now we're talking about the fate of the planet.
It really shows how complex this all is
Right.
and important.
Definitely. As we wrap up, I want to leave our listeners with a final thought. With the whole world needing more and more milk, how can India, with all its unique breeds and its expertise, find a way to produce more milk but do it sustainably? How can we make sure we're taking care of the animals and the environment at the same time?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's a tough challenge, but it's one we have to face head-on.
For sure. And it's not just about India, this affects everyone.
Exactly. Finding creative and sustainable solutions in the dairy industry that benefits everyone and everything, that's the future. Well said. And on that note, we come to the end of our deep dive. Thanks for joining us on this incredible journey through the world of India's milk production.
It's been a pleasure.
We hope you learned something new and that you'll continue to explore these topics. It's a conversation that needs to continue.
Absolutely. Keep learning, keep asking questions.
Until next time.